It's been a little while since I've done a video. I've been going through some personal things and am feeling a lot better and inspired to start sharing my experiences and perspectives again on lots of different things, particularly parenting, unschooling, and childcare. So what I'm going to share today, I've made some notes here. I have written down some of the rules that are put in place in a childcare centre. Some are implemented by the department themselves, and some are implemented by the director or educators working at a childcare centre. Now, I do know that some of these rules cannot be broken, they cannot be avoided, but we can find ways to try to stick to them as closely as possible in a way that honours the free will and choice and autonomy of the children. Some of the rules that I feel are unnecessary and, if broken, will not harm the children and is not putting them in any danger, breaking some of these rules or trying to work with them differently, is going to actually promote the health and well-being, the emotional health and well-being of the children. So the first one, eating at the table or strictly sitting down to eat. Now, there is a rule in place. Just because there are policies and rules in place, it doesn't mean we can never challenge them verbally. Like, it doesn't mean that we cannot speak up about these and say, it doesn't make them all true. So a policy could say that children must at all times be seated while eating. That doesn't mean it's necessarily true for everyone. So I'm actually here in this video to challenge some of these rules and bring a bit of an alternative perspective to them. So eating at the table or sitting down to eat, yes, I can see this being safe for younger children who could possibly still be learning how to balance on their feet or crawling, and yes, if they were to fall maybe and trip, there is a risk of choking on food. Yet it doesn't have to apply through all the ages of children. As children get older, it's only natural that they want to move their bodies more, and I see no harm in a child picking up a sandwich and running off and eating it. If they are 3 years old, 2.5 years old, I'm not promoting this in any way. I would never share anything that poses a threat or danger to children. And of course, we need to all listen to our own intuition and what feels right. I did encourage children when I worked in public childcare to sit down and eat. However, I didn't feel it was necessary to teach them that you must all sit at the table. It's a conditioned belief that food must be eaten at the table in a particular manner, using manners, sitting with everybody, not talking, being quiet, and eating in a respectful, clean way. I found that this was implemented in a lot of the rooms where I worked, and it just felt very unnatural and unnecessary to me. Children, food and eating does not need to be made to be this serious scheduled thing that imposes limits and rules. Eating is the most natural thing for us to do throughout the day. It doesn't mean we have to be sitting in a certain position or being quiet. And many times these rules actually deterred the children from eating. particularly when the food was made at the centre and children didn't get a choice of what to eat, it posed a lot of problems. So children were going hungry. I found that if we tried to eat outdoors when the weather was nice, we would have a mat, and the children, it was okay to show the children that this is where we sit and this is where we eat. However, it was okay if they sort of veered a little bit away from that eating area. Some of them wanted to go sit on a log nearby, and that I was fine with that because they were still sitting down to eat. They weren't running around climbing on all of the equipment, getting food everywhere. I just didn't want to make it about sitting still, being quiet, and being clean, because to me that's not what eating is all about. The next one, group time, sitting on the mat. There was this big emphasis on, okay, everybody sitting on the mat, whether it's for story time or a particular group activity. Often there were a few children that didn't want to sit still and didn't want to sit on the mat, and they would wander off and they would play with some toys. I would allow this to happen, but I did see a lot of the other educators become very angry and very stressed and very forceful around this. And I found that if you really want children to comply and sit down on the mat, you need to first have something inviting. You need to have the activity already underway to capture their attention. Whereas this would happen the other way around. Educators would not begin the activity until every single child was sitting on that mat, sometimes in a perfect circle. There were no talking, hands were still, everything was quiet. This is going against nature as far as I'm concerned, because children are not meant to stop moving when told to do so. They don't operate like that. They have a lot of energy, and they are growing, learning beings who are exploring movement constantly, and they may not want to engage in that particular activity on the mat, and they should be honored for their choices and be allowed to have that choice. So there's a lot of emphasis around this group time, and I just think it is really unnecessary, and it teaches children to conform to things that may not be in their best interests. So the next one, there's a big rule in daycare about cleaning up after yourself. Now, I've never really been someone to make a whole big routine out of it's time to clean up. When I walked into the room that I was yet to lead, before I was the lead educator, there was always this very stressful period of the day where the big mess that had been made in the morning routine, there was now this sudden, right, everybody clean up now. And it was, whether they wanted to or not, children were made to clean. Now, I know this is going to go against a lot of people's beliefs about teaching children responsibility, but us as educators and adults, we know what it's like to have to clean up a big house full of mess, a big room. Young children, they don't want to do that, and it's okay, because they shouldn't have that level of responsibility put on them at such a young age. Now, the way that I would handle this cleanup was, if the room was already clean and I had expressed that it's not playtime anymore, it's eating time or it's rest time, and a child would grab a bucket of toys and just tip them out, I would ask that child to pick them up, because they did that not as a result of exploration and creativity that they are entitled to, but they did that for just because they did that. And they did need to learn that if you don't want to play with something and you're just making a mess, then you do need to clean up that mess. Now, This did not look like me yelling or forcing, and a lot of times if that child refused, I would just let that go. It's not worth the next 10 minutes of high intensity stress, raising my voice and trying to teach that child what they did was wrong when it's not going to work anyway. Children don't learn through being told off and forced. They learn through example and kindness and compassion and understanding. But I did notice that when I asked kindly, often the children, if they made a mess, they would pick it up and I would help them. I would do it with them because I don't think it's fair to make a child sit there for 10 minutes cleaning. It's okay to find a bit of a balance between, okay, help me clean up, please, and you made this mess, you need to spend the next 10 or 20 minutes cleaning, even if you don't want to. Okay, the next rule, sharing. So there's this rule that's often implemented that you must take turns and share. I don't think this is necessarily helpful because to a child that has a toy and is playing with it, they've built an attachment to that toy. They think it's their toy. So they don't want to hand that toy over. There are ways to encourage sharing without trying to teach children that that's what's right. Because in fact, sharing is not what's right or true. It's something that is okay to do. It's something that we can do and something that can be very beneficial and positive. But it's not actually a rule to share. To a child, it's okay that they don't want to stop playing with something they're playing with. So it's important to honor, okay, that child has this toy, and go to the child that wants that toy. Let's find something else because this person doesn't want to share and they don't have to. But maybe when they are finished playing with that thing, you will get a turn. It was often said to us that we needed to teach children by having timers and hourglass, timers that you'd flip over. And this was sometimes helpful. But if you can imagine going around to 22 children who are fighting over toys, it's not necessarily going to be helpful in the long run. And this brings me to my next point. My next rule, which is no bringing your own toys. Actually, the sharing is learned through children having their own toys at daycare, because it teaches when a child has a toy that belongs to daycare, the other children know it's not their toy. They know it's a daycare's toy. Even though they feel a sense of attachment and like it's theirs, they want it to be theirs, but they know it's not theirs. When a child brings their own toys, they know it's theirs and the other children know it's theirs. There's no fighting over it. And when there's no fighting and nobody's trying to snatch toys, children often want to share, and they will decide on their own, and they will invite other children to participate in the activity. There is a rule. I mean, I don't understand why it's such a big thing in daycare centers that you don't bring your own toy. I have a fair idea that it is because there is some level of fighting when one child brings their own toy, but most of the others are not allowed. It's got to be a collaborative thing that educators implement so that, most or many children are bringing their own belongings to create this sharing and harmony. I feel that there were times where one child brought a toy and it caused some arguments and fights, and then that toy was taken, rather than the educator coming from a place of conscious awareness and the willingness for conflict resolution to teach your children how to deal with these scenarios. The toy would just be taken away so that the educator didn't have to deal with that stressful situation. And so when educators don't want to face these stressful situations consciously, they will often just ban something or take something away because it's easier. Easier is okay to do, but it doesn't make it healthy or helpful for the children, which is what childcare is all about. The next rule, there is a rule, limited screen time. So there's a big emphasis on too much TV or too much screen time is harmful for children, and it was often treated as seen as educators using it as a babysitting tool. Now, I can give an example. When I was working with the 2-year-olds room, when I first started working in childcare, there were children that didn't want to sleep during rest time. But being a new educator, I was often told that they have to have a sleep. And when the other educator would go on lunch, the children would start to get restless and wake up, as they do when that main educator is not around. They kind of come out of their shell a little bit. And so I would find myself with half the children sound asleep and half the children loud and rowdy, and I felt very pressured to keep them quiet so that they didn't wake the children who really needed the sleep. So on occasion I would bring out the iPad and I would put a cartoon or an educational show on for them, and this would get them quiet in a quiet area, sitting down, and it calmed and quietened the room. However, when that educator would walk back in the room, it would be said to me that they're not supposed to be on screens. The screens were taken away. I was told I couldn't do that, and I was left feeling like trapped in a room with rowdy, noisy children. So I don't believe in my time as a lead educator, I actually would have the TV on during rest time because the children in my room were too old to sleep. They were at the end of the year. They were approaching the age of 4, and that is well and truly definitely coming to that age range where they no longer need a daytime nap. And the TV would help them to rest their bodies and lower their heart rate and become a bit self-regulated so that they had some downtime. And that it was always brought to my attention that was a no-no, and it had to be very limited. And eventually the TV was taken away from our room as a result of miscommunication and misunderstanding of the use of this. The next unnecessary rule that I believe is specific rest time. So the department, there's policies, rest time policies, that between 12 and 2 is the rest time, and this is helpful for some children, but it's also there should be something to encourage children to rest outside of these times. So as my own children did, I found that many of the children in my care at the childcare centre weren't getting tired until after 2 p.m, sometimes 3 p.m. Now this is well and truly outside of that range of rest period. This is when the educators are supposed to be cleaned up and ready for the parents to come and pick up the children. But I would find that as these times approach, the 2 p.m, the 3 p.m, some of these children would become very cranky and tired, and I would often bring out a large cushion outside where I could see them, or have the cushion right inside the door, and they would lay down and go to sleep. And there's another policy actually that was often brought to my attention, which is that all children must sleep on a bed. They're not allowed to sleep on a cushion. It's not part of safe sleeping. Actually, for older children, it is very safe, and it's a lot more healthier than waking a child who's fallen asleep on that cushion to move them to a bed for the sake of the rules, for them to be woken up and hysterical and upset and cranky and won't go back to sleep because they've been disturbed. I don't think it's okay to disturb children when they're sleeping if they are in a safe position. So some of these rules are just, I feel, really unnecessary and don't support the natural rhythms and sleeping patterns of the children. Another rule is using manners. So it's often implemented that children must say please and thank you. This is silly to me because they are just words conditioned into children. Gratitude is not something that can be taught or needs to be proven from a child. Gratitude is inherent in each of us. Children learn gratitude through being treated right. They learn respect by being respected. They learn to say thank you when they are given love and kindness. And I've seen this not only with my own children, but all of the children in my care who I didn't force to say please and thank you, who have spontaneously shown me in their own way, thank you. And my own children always say thank you to me, and I never made them use manners growing up. They always say please when they want something, and I never made them say that. And teaching children that they can't have something they want until they say this word that actually has no meaning to them because it is not a lived experience. I feel like that's really conditioning children into them believing that they need to prove their worth to receive a gift or receive food and water and love and things that they want should be given freely with no conditions. And part of those conditions that are implemented is that they need to show respect and manners, and I don't believe that that's necessary in childcare. The last thing I'm going to bring up is observations. So there's a huge emphasis on doing observations for children. There's one per month needed per child, and follow-ups and evaluations. Now, the reason these are unnecessary is because we only really have the present moment. We only really need to be focused on the present moment and what the child is doing now, what they are interested in now, who they are now. Observations not only put a lot of stress on educators, take a lot of time away from supervision and their own personal time out to rest and be with their own thoughts and feelings. Observations actually took my weekends away from me because I didn't have time to do them. Running a room of 22 children, I didn't have time to do them on my lunch hour. I didn't have time to do them during rest time. So I was forced, not by others, but as a lead educator, I forced myself to do these in my own personal time at home, which took time away from my own family and obligations. And I just really didn't feel that they were necessary. I felt a lot of the times that I was not making a lot of it up, but I was trying to draw from somewhere because I had to show the proof of learning for these children, when I feel like it's unnecessary because you can't force a child to be somewhere they're not. And we need to learn to appreciate and have gratitude for children in the moment without having to. It's okay to take photos and show that off and be proud, but to try to prove and then try to make up a new learning opportunity to extend off of that, it takes a lot of unnecessary energy and time. And it also puts pressure on the children, because when they're not doing this follow-up activity or exercise, and we have nothing to prove, so then we try to force them to learn and do activities that they don't really want to do for the sake of these rules. So I'm going to leave it there. There's probably a lot more, which I will add as they come to me. I hope you liked this video. I'd love to hear from you if you have any suggestions for topics or any thoughts on anything that I have shared. And I'm wishing you all a lovely day today. Take care. Bye.